Hello, everyone. Networking, am I right? All right, so obviously we're here with Benjamin Lyon, so excited. You have a great background, so I think we'll start there. Before making your way to Aptiv, you spent 20 years at Apple, and then Astra, a satellite company. I love seeing what automotive can learn from other industries, and you're the perfect person to give us those insights. Can you talk about your time at Apple and how your interest developed during your time there?
Well, sure. First of all, thanks for inviting me here. It's absolutely awesome to be here with you and all of you. And I think I would first say, and we were actually just talking about right before we came out on stage, how so many people in the audience and who are presenting at booths today are very, very passionate about the interaction between people and technology and what technology can bring to enhancing the lives of people, great user experiences. And for me, I've always been deeply passionate about that, especially because I strongly believe that we should not be changing to try and make our lives less optimal in order to use technology. Technology should be enhancing our lives, giving us all shortcuts. And so that inspired me through multiple decades of consumer products, as well as then getting into autonomous technology, and both autonomous technology that drives around as well as autonomous technology goes to space. And one of the things I realized was that the foundation to build those mission-critical, safety-critical applications on top of, that AI on top of, the foundational software wasn't there. And that's like trying to build an incredibly beautiful, house or a tower on top of quicksand. That happens. So part of why I came to Aptiv is that Aptiv is deeply committed to building that software foundation that works every time and all the time.
During your time at Astra, you launched 22 satellites and also worked on Hall effect thrusters, which is based on an electric field. Hall effect thrusters were an existing technology. The innovation came in scaling. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, this is a great example of how building a 1 or 2 or 3 or even 20 or 50 of something is completely different to building 100,000, 500,000, 1 million, billions of a thing, right? Consumer products like smart devices, there are literally billions of them out there in the world, and they all have to work. And that's also the difference between a prototype and a real product. And a lot of the folks here today are actually driving through that journey right now of taking technology that has been in that kind of incubation mode and driving it through into that productization mode. The difference in what we are all doing is that it's safety critical and it's mission critical. And so that means it has to work every time and all the time. So with the Hall effect thrusters, for example, the big innovation was how could we simplify the design? Because complexity and reliability kind of go almost anti-correlated, opposite. And so the innovation was really driving down the number of parts in the system by like a factor of 5 in order to make something that could be built and tested and then sent up to space where if it doesn't work, you can't service it and have it work for years and years.
You're passionate about robotics, personal security, and I'm going to add animals based on his roster of pets. Of course, security is critically important in automotive. How does your passion for security look in practice?
Well, first of all, I wouldn't have all these animals if I didn't have 2 daughters, so daughter power. And actually, one of the cool things I did right before I left on this trip was I was relearning Java in order to be able to help my daughter with her Java homework because she's doing a bunch of Java and Python programming classes in high school. But talking about security, we talk about mission critical, safety critical, functional safety, and the resulting physical security that you get from that has been something that our industry, automotive and also aviation, and aerospace and defense, have been dealing with for quite a number of years. The thing that's new in automotive, which is a transition that consumer devices and telecom have already gone through, is the explosion of connectivity. And the moment that everything is connected, you have the benefit of being able to get the insights from all of the devices that participate in the network in order to improve user experience. However, the attack surface for cybersecurity is now much broader. It's much easier to attack a system that's connected to the internet. And so that, again, gets back to that foundation and what we're building at Aptiv, which is you have to build security, cybersecurity in at all levels of the system. You can't just kind of paint it on or lipstick it on after the fact. And so that's both in the tool chain, and we actually use AI/ML in our cybersecurity tool chain in order to really find as many possible weaknesses in our software before it ever gets out to a customer, and certainly before it gets to our customer's customer, which is the actual end customer.
Now let's move on to Aptiv. Just a general, tell us about what drew you to Aptiv. Obviously, the foundation that you talked about before, but tell us more about culture. What else?
Yeah, well, one of the things that's amazing about Aptiv, it's like one of the biggest companies that most folks have never heard of. It's a company that is a global company, many different countries, all over the world, and I love the diversity that you get with people from completely different backgrounds in different areas of the world all collaborating together. It also, those perspectives make our products better, and I'll give you a really simple example. ADAS, so automated driving, which Aptiv was one of the first companies, actually Aptiv was the first company to put a radar into a vehicle. And it was one of the first companies to bring automated driving into mass production in the market. If you go to India, the driving habits and the rules of the road are completely different culturally than what you see in China. And what you see in China is very different than what you see in the United States. And of course, depending on whether you come from the United States or you come from Great Britain, either the right side of the road is the wrong side or the right side of the road to drive on. So being a global company and having that diversity in the culture and in actually doing development in multiple different places on the globe, it creates a much richer data set that we can use of use cases for making our products better. So that's one big piece of it. I would say that the other thing I absolutely love, particularly about Aptiv, is that commitment to innovation and that commitment to not just waiting, but actually leading and solving hard problems. And I'm very attracted to solving hard problems, and I love to work with great people who run towards those challenging problems, who see them as opportunities.
Before this, I stalked you on LinkedIn quite a bit. And doing so, I noticed you comment a lot on your team's work, and everything you say is so positive and encouraging. You are recognizing their work and appreciating them. Can you talk about your leadership philosophy? And I mean, you're leading 19,000 engineers. That's crazy. How do you promote that throughout that many people?
Well, I mean, I mentioned I have 2 daughters, right? And the first thing I wanted to make sure my daughters knew is they could do anything. And really, I feel the same way about, the talent in our company, is that, people talk about, hey, you need the right product at the right time. You need the right services. You need the right business model. You also need the right team. And so my philosophy towards leadership is ensure I have the right team, because when our customers come to us and say, hey, we want to work with Aptiv, what they're really saying is, I believe in the team. So everything I can do to help that team be the right team, with how they work with each other, with how they focus, and how they interact with the customer is, if I can be useful, that's goodness.
In the fall of 2022, I was very lucky to get to travel around Europe, meeting with companies who were on the in-cabin scene just as we were launching this event. And I was very lucky to get to go to Wuppertal and visit Aptiv. It was funny, it was a rainy day, and I had taken the bus, and I'm walking with my umbrella, and when you get, I don't know, 5 blocks away from the building, the logo is on the top, and it sort of just appears from behind the clouds like a beautiful oasis. And so I just have really warm feelings about that. Your team was incredibly welcoming and so excited and passionate. What I was there was to see their in-cabin demos. I got to see lots of cool technology that I'm not allowed to talk about too much. Can you talk about, is in-cabin important? Why are you working on it at Aptiv? And what do you see as that as far as forming into business?
Yeah, well, first of all, I discovered, I think yesterday, that 2 of the people who you met while you were in Wuppertal are actually here today. I won't call them out by name, but they're here. The 2 of those Aptiv people that you met are actually here. Look, what happens inside the vehicle is important not only to providing an enhanced in-cabin experience based on what's going on inside the vehicle, but you can use what's going on inside the cabin to actually give a much greater experience in ADAS, for example, for how the vehicle's driving and what happens outside the vehicle. The opposite is also true, that what's going on outside the vehicle should be fed into the in-cabin experience to enhance it. And so to me, in order to really realize the opportunities, what we must have is the ability to do mixed criticality software, which means an operating system, hypervisors, et cetera, that can do mixed criticality, so that we can gain insights from ADAS. We can gain insights from in-cabin sensing, which is both a phenomenal sensing hardware that provides great value, paired with phenomenal AI/ML algorithms. So you put those together. I think once you do that, the entire experience of the vehicle becomes much more predictive. It feels much more natural. And I think there's a lot of business to be had in new applications, new services that come from the insights we get and can provide customers.
Can you go into a little bit more detail to explain exactly what mixed criticality means and how it's applied?
Yes, well, you're a systems engineer, so I know you know deeply what mixed criticality is. For the rest of you folks, who some of you probably are also deep into this, the fundamental issue is you have user experience applications, kind of like you run on your smart device, for example, your smartphone, where at the end of the day, worst comes to worst, you reboot your phone or you kill that application. And if that application ends up freezing your whole phone and you have to reboot your phone, no big deal. It doesn't stop your heart. You can still walk around. Safety critical or mission critical systems are ones where if that software stops doing what it needs to do, or if one piece of software on that hardware bleeds over and let's say there's a memory leak and as a result you break some other piece of software that's running on that hardware, something really bad could happen, like your brakes lock up for example, or you're in the middle of a maneuver in ADAS and suddenly you hit another vehicle. And so freedom of interference is really important. And the old way or legacy way of doing that is you have separate boxes, and those boxes don't really talk. But that limits the level of insight you can get. And so what you need in a true mixed criticality system is the ability to have freedom of interference done in software through something like a hypervisor, through really clean APIs, so application interfaces, which is how pieces of software talk to each other, and be able to run both of those things on the same piece of hardware or on hardware that is networked together. So from a functional safety standpoint, it's effectively the same piece of hardware.
What have you implemented at Aptiv that has come from your experience in other arenas?
Well, one of the things that we've really focused on is that innovation comes from everywhere. And I think this is incredibly important. Often, folks can take a very narrow view of innovation and think of it as purely patents, for example. When the reality is that you can have an idea that starts as a new business model, and then when you go, oh, well, how do I serve that new business model? Well, actually, it's through the following applications. Well, with that suite of applications, there's a whole suite of technologies that enable those applications, both hardware and software technologies. Well, to deliver them, there's manufacturing, which could be, factories and hardware and automation and AI and that. Or it could be a tool chain, an AI/ML-enabled tool chain, or a new kind of CI/CD tool chain. So you can have innovation that ranges from, how do you make a better connector, to AI, to a completely new go-to-market strategy. And so when you think about and open up your mind to thinking about innovation that way, instead of delivering components, you deliver solutions. You deliver systems and systems of systems. And that is also from the perspective of bringing in talent and retaining top talent. That broader view of innovation allows us to be so much more than the sum of our parts.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you've done with LLMs and requirements?
Yeah, so we have, I have to think about what I can share, and here's an example I can share. So LLMs, so large language models, are an incredibly powerful tool. It's more difficult to use in our industry because most of the kind of the foundational models are trained on web applications like Java and things like that. And of course, our software has to be safe and has to be secure. And so we're often writing in C or C++, and the examples of safety critical code aren't all over the internet. Well, the good news is Aptiv has been in this business for over a decade, and so we can train on our own data. And so what we've done is we've actually implemented GPT-based models, not just in things like our ADAS and our products that we ship to customers, but actually in our entire software development tool chain, in order to do things like auto-document code, to do things like expand our penetration test set beyond what we just came up with in order to have a much stronger cybersecurity kind of verification and validation out the other side of our software tool chain. And I'll give you one last example just because I think this one's really, really cool, which is half the problem in our business is we get tens of thousands of requirements on a single project from a customer. And going through all of that and understanding what our customers need and then matching that with the right expert in the company to evaluate it, it can be incredibly difficult and burdensome. And so we use GPTs that we've trained, we fine-tuned in order to be able to identify what are requirements that are high quality and we already meet, but also where we have an issue, who is the right expert in the company to pipe that to automatically to get their eyeballs on that as soon as possible. And it works, and it's like one of the coolest things. And our people love it because now they get to spend their time doing the actual engineering work as opposed to all of this logistical and filtering work.
There's a lot of suppliers here from the industry, of course. What advice would you give to suppliers who want to work with a company like Aptiv?
Well, I'll give you just my own personal advice, just speaking for myself, which I think is true across the industry, which is the following. There is a big mega trend going on right now, which really started in consumer products and has rolled through telecom and now into automotive, which is that you have to collaborate. And you're collaborating on code bases, on more and more integrated hardware and software. And that those applications, some of them live on the vehicle, some of them live off the vehicle at the near edge, like at the cell tower or compute near the cell tower. Some of that lives in the cloud. And more of that's going to happen. And so you have to figure out, and we have to figure out, how to collaborate very, very deeply in win-win scenarios. And so that's the thing. And I would, the kind of the transactional way of working together, I think, is very much in the past, and we have to work very collaboratively and very deeply to provide really, really great value for our customers, because that's the business we're all in, which is at the end of the day, we have friends, we buy products ourselves, we have our kids, we have a world we want our kids to grow up in, and we are all part of creating that amazing value for them.
My understanding is that when you're working in the DMS space specifically, we have DMS providers. There are a million of them down on the floor. But companies like Aptiv also develop their own DMS. So if an OEM selects or is interested in having one of the other suppliers validated for you to integrate, there's this interesting situation we're in now where they have somewhat of a black box that they're turning over to you, but you want to be able to understand as much of that as possible so that you can validate it. Can you talk about that at all?
Yeah. So it's interesting. If you look at consumer products, for example, those are actually, they look really simple on the outside, but they're actually very complicated on the inside. And there are literally hundreds to thousands of suppliers that feed into those products that are highly integrated. And for those products to work, the level of information sharing has to be high. Now, it means there also has to be a lot of respect between partners, because you have to believe that if you're a supplier and you're sharing with your partner some critical information about your technology, that they won't feed that over to your competitor over here. And that's very important to me. It's very important to Aptiv. It's also, the way, if you look at consumer products and in other areas, protecting confidentiality and protecting IP is really, really important. So that's one piece. The other is I believe strongly in modular systems with clean interfaces. Because when you have well-defined interfaces, you actually can give your customers choice. We have some customers that come to Aptiv and say, we want a complete solution, please put together and provide us a complete solution. Sometimes they come to us and they go, we have most of this solution and we really like it, but we're really struggling in this one area, which may be in-cabin sensing. It may be, we've got the hardware, but Aptiv, we really need some great algorithms and great software, some AI to interpret what's coming off of this hardware in a great way. And we need to meet our customers where they're at, and we're happy to do that. So that's why we focused on containerized software. It's also the reason why we build abstraction layers, so actually we can plug in different SoCs and run our software on an abstraction layer that we've built. I would just end with, on this particular topic, the thing that matters is the right solution. And so for a sustainable business, you have to provide the right solution. And because technology evolves, customer needs evolve, what the right solution is evolves. So you have to provide the right solution, and you have to be flexible and be willing to evolve.
All right. With that, I think we should do a Q&A. We've got a few minutes for that. We've got the catch box down here. So if anybody has a question, it's a soft thing. We'll throw it around. And before you ask your question, if you could just introduce yourself and your company. Hold on.
Is there an engineer in the house?
Testing? There we go. Okay. Yeah, good.
Sehr gut.
So, Miguel Testar, I do product for ADAS sensors at Bosch. You were talking about your daughter, so I'll also make my question through my daughter or using her. She was born in the Bay Area, so she has been robotaxis around, Waymo's around quite a bit, and now we live in suburban South Germany. She's 5 years old. And we were the other day at some friend's place, and there was a toy car, and she wasn't interested in driving it. It's not cool. It's cooler to have a driverless car. So do you think level 4 will be so affordable in 13 years when she's 18 and you can get a driving license in Europe that she will not need a driving license? So robotaxis will be so cheap and affordable, and level 4 cars will be so affordable that she will not need a driving license. What do you think?
I think that's a loaded question. So, I mean, first of all, I think you and I both know that there are significant challenges both on the hardware side of autonomous driving in terms of getting the cost down. It's one thing to have, 500 robotaxis that cost, hundreds of thousands of dollars a pop. It's quite another thing to have a, $35,000 US vehicle that has the same capability. And so there's an evolution of hardware that has to happen, both in sensing as well as compute and power. So that's one piece. The other piece is level 4 autonomous driving itself has some significant technical challenges. And I'll just name one, which is imagine you're playing chess or Go. The amazing thing about that is you can see the entire chessboard. You can see all the pieces. What you're guessing at is what your opponent will do, but you can see the entire board, and it's just a matter of available time and processing power to determine what would be the best possible move and what is the total spectrum of possible things that might happen, right? In the world of level 4 autonomous driving, you're actually not able to see the whole chessboard. And so you have to reason through ambiguity. And it's that reasoning through ambiguity that is so difficult for robotic systems to do. That said, part of what's so exciting about transformers is that unlike kind of older versions of AI/ML, they do much better at truly new situations. But at the end of the day, they're only as good as the training data, and autonomous driving, as an example, is a very specific type of data set. It's, again, you can't just go cruise the internet and find, literally billions of examples of Java. So do I know when level 4 will happen? No. But there are significant challenges both in terms of productization and driving cost out of hardware, as well as real technical challenges in AI/ML, specifically in the predictions and decision-making area that need to be solved. And then lastly, again, there's a difference between building and developing and deploying and managing a set of prototypes, which hundreds of a thing are prototypes, and deploying millions and millions of products that then you're responsible for. I've personally had to deal with what happens if you deploy software to millions and millions of units of a thing and something doesn't go right. And again, it's a very different thing if that thing is safety critical, right?
All right, thanks.
All right, other questions? Rob, up front.
Hi, I'm Radur Gidan from Endava. You mentioned large language models, and I'm also a big fan. So I wonder if you see in the future multimodal models that could understand the exterior and the interior of the car, make sense of the cultural context and everything running in a car. So
I'm going to just answer that with one word, and unfortunately I can't say anything more. The answer is yes.
thank you.
Any other questions? You don't get many chances to ask the CTO of Aptiv a question. I'll tell you, it's a riot. Don't be shy. I've got one, actually. Leading 19,000 people sounds really stressful to me. How do you de-stress?
Oh, gosh. How do you de-stress? I don't know what's more stressful, parenting or leading tens of thousands of people. I think parenting may be more stressful because it's like, I work with musicians. I collect violins, and often my violins are in the hands of others. And what they tell me is that performing in front of like 5 or 6 people is terrifying, even for these musicians who are used to performing in front of packed houses of many tens of thousands of people. So, but to directly answer your question of how I de-stress, is I find that when I get to learn something new, truly new, from somebody else, that gives me a lot of peace. And I guess the other thing is I'm very fortunate in my life. I get to work with incredible people working on incredibly difficult but important problems. And just reflecting on that for half a second and going, how lucky am I that I get to work with these amazing people? And I have an amazing family. I get to be here in Barcelona with all of you, learning about the great technology that each of you have been working on and the solutions that you're going to provide that make people's lives better. That takes the stress out for me.
I love that answer. Right here. Oh, Roger.
Hi, Benjamin. I used to go to China a couple times a year. I haven't been in a few years now. I was talking to another Tier 1 executive who had just been to Shanghai, talking about how he couldn't see a fossil fuel-driven vehicle anywhere on the roads in the city when he was there. The skies were clear, the air was clear, you couldn't see the air, and he had to watch himself for the electric scooters coming without any audible warning. What I want to ask you about is, I'm assuming you get to visit the place that I haven't been able to visit in a while, and I'm wondering if your operations in China, how they differ from your operations elsewhere in the world, and how the people how they work and how they're solving these problems.
That is a great question. It's pretty broad, so I'm going to narrow it a little bit, but it's a great question. First of all, I was actually just in China a week and a half ago. And we held our annual Innovation Awards actually in Suzhou in China. And one of the things I love about the world of automotive in China right now is that in a lot of ways it was birthed out of the smart device revolution that kind of came a decade plus ago. And so it's digitally native. On top of that, a lot of these startups kind of took their cue of, either start with fully battery electric or start with hybrid, and a clean sheet. They don't have to deal with the backwards compatibility and legacy. And that combination of digital native and starting with a clean sheet has allowed them to go really, really quickly. And the pace of innovation is phenomenal. Now that said, if you look at like Euro NCAP standards, if you look at kind of what the bar is in terms of cybersecurity and functional safety to ship globally, that is a thing where globals, global tier ones, et cetera, can really be of value to some of these China local companies that are looking to expand globally. So I think that's one thing. I think the other is there's always a tremendous amount to learn back and forth. You know, the pace of innovation is phenomenal in China. At the same time, there's a tremendous amount of experience of how do you ship these mission critical, safety critical systems at scale. How do you move from building and selling, you know, maybe 2,500 units a year to selling 30,000, 50,000, 150,000 units a year. And in the world of automotive, those are very, very different beasts. And the supply chain complexity that you deal with, et cetera. Also, it reminds me a lot of the early days of smart devices, where it was a little bit of the wild, wild west. So what will be vertically integrated versus what is, what do OEMs do best versus where should they partner? That is absolutely an evolving theme. And so the nice thing about Aptiv is that it's actually been in China for over 30 years. And that's not just manufacturing, there's a big design center. And so we get to benefit, again, that diversity of opinions is so important to making the whole company better. So those are just a couple of thoughts for you.
Benjamin, thank you so much for being here with us. This was awesome.
Well, thank you, and thank you all of you.